Hello everyone, so today we're going to tackle and to study Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It's a very interesting classic which is part of the list of the classics that you have to study in Terminale. I want to help you catch a glimpse of the most important things that you have to remember about it. So first of all, the novel fits in the theme of traveling, territory and borders. Okay? It's the third theme that you have to study that is part of your syllabus, and it's interesting to address this. Charlotte Bronte is a very famous writer, as well as her sister, maybe Emily Bronte, that you might have heard about in French, because she wrote Wuthering Heights, Les Hauts de Hurlevent. And it's her sister writing Jane Eyre. Okay, so first things first, a brief presentation of the writer and the novel. So Charlotte Bronte was born on the 21st of April, 1816, in Thornton, Yorkshire, not Shire, but Shire. And she died on the 31st of March, 1855, okay, in Yorkshire as well. She moved to the Yorkshire moors with her parents and 5 siblings in 1820. The moors, I've highlighted that word because it's very, very important to know this word when you read a novel by the Bronte sisters. Most of the settings most of the novels, most of the plots take place there. So it's important to know what the moors are. It's a rocky, let's say, area. Okay, in the countryside. Okay, in 1824, Charlotte and Emily, together with their elder sisters, were sent to, they attended the clergy daughters' school, which was a boarding school where, with very strict and very harsh rules, So it's really interesting because we find echoes of this very period of her life in the novel Jane Eyre. Okay, as she said, the fees were low, the food unattractive, and the discipline harsh. In 1842, Charlotte and her sister were sent to Brussels as pupils to improve their qualifications in French. Another echo that we find in the novel, because Jane is able to speak perfect French when she becomes a governess. Okay, so 1847, Jane Eyre is written, and we remember the first part of the title today, but the original title is Jane Eyre, an autobiography. And it's really important because it explains why Charlotte Bronte was so much inspired by her life. Then from 1848 to 1849, her brother Branwell died in September, then Emily in December, then Anne in May. Okay, so it was, let's say, a rather difficult year, what we could call a rough patch for her. Rough patch, because she had to cope with different losses in her family. In 1854, she married her 4th suitor. Okay, the fourth person that wanted to marry her, that tried to seduce her. Okay, he was an Irishman, and he was named Arthur Bell Nichols, and they married in Haworth as well, which is the same place where she died, actually. It was the very last place where she lived in her life. The novel, it's actually her second novel, because the first novel was first refused. It was called The Professor. He wasn't accepted by the publishing firm, and she had to submit another novel that she was writing almost at the same time, and she submitted Jane Eyre. That was accepted. After she died, her husband managed to get the first novel published posthumously. So the novel is about the eponymous narrator, and it's about the character's journey from Gateshead as an orphan to Lowood and Thornfield as a governess and a wife. okay? Governesses were legion at that time because in the countryside mostly, their role was to educate children. There were some sort of a reference and for knowledge, and they had the role, and they were given this role in the family, especially in wealthy families. So governesses, there were a lot of governesses in London, and she was part of them. So the genre is Gothic, of course, this idea of the double, etc. And I'm going to get more into details in a minute. The Bildungsroman, of course, and the Romans at the same time. Bildungsroman, I repeat, it's a coming-of-age novel, okay, where the characters grows. Where the character grows, sorry. So here, autobiographical elements, okay, and this is what I called admissible characteristics. Of course, even if it's a pretty long novel, it's very dense. I know when you read it. There are 2 parts. It's written in a very, very formal language. It's Charlotte Bronte writing. You have to make your own opinion of the novel as well. Try to watch the movie versions maybe at the same time to get a clearer idea of it. But it's important to make your own opinion to be able to analyze it properly. Anyway, there are admissible characteristics that I'm trying to cover now. The author really had a long-lasting friendship with a woman called Helen, and Helen is also a very important character in the novel that you would study with your teachers. So, different languages spoken by Jane Eyre that testify to her journeys. It's because she has traveled a lot that she's able to speak languages so well and to master them enough to be able to teach them. So Lowood in the novel, Coranbridge in real life. Coranbridge was the school that she attended with her sisters when she was a child. So the second aspect is shifts and impacts, okay? It's very important. Every new place allows Jane Eyre to grow, and that's why I wanted to study this novel in the topic, in the theme of traveling, because these travels are very important in her life. Okay, so anytime she moves, she grows or she learns something about herself or about life. And it's important to keep it in mind. Okay, so the narrative voice directly addresses the reader who becomes a witness of this evolution. Okay, we all have this quote in mind, "Reader, I married him." That is a very famous quote about Jane Eyre. And of course, you know, in the name reader, we understand that she speaks directly to the reader. So onomastics is very important, the study of names, okay, onomastic. So the name of different places is meaningful. Gateshead, when she's a child, she feels in a prison. She feels like in a prison. Lowood, okay, not a very good mood first when she starts teaching, and then Thornfield, a field full of thorns, okay, like enemies or obstacles. So all of this contributes to the Gothic dimension in the novel and the supernatural elements that we all keep in mind. For example, the character of Bertha Mason, okay, Bertha Mason, who is actually locked in the attic, and that Jane feels in the house is also important. So fire and the mad woman in the attic, I mentioned it. There is a Cinderella theme, and this is my last focus in this part, that is also interesting, and it reminds of another very important novel in British literature, which is Samuel Richardson's Pamela. Okay, so it's important to keep this idea. We could easily compare Jane Eyre to Cinderella. A few quotes now. Okay, so I'm glad you are no relation of mine, blah, blah, blah. I let you read the first quote and then I talk about it. So it's taken from chapter 4. Jane is a very sassy child. That means that she speaks her mind and she's not really respectful, especially for the time. We are in Victorian England, and you can imagine that it's not really respectful to speak like that. But anyway, it shows a very strong-tempered child. And I wanted you to analyze this part. I will never call you aunt again. She was partly brought up by her mother's sister that came to help after her mother died. But, you know, it's a reference to, maybe, let's say, the bad memories she keeps of that time. She kept of that time. So, second quote now. I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay, so this quote is also very representative of the second step in her journey, which is Lowood. It's properly the place where she grows. She actually comes to terms with the benefits of the first part of her life. She understands her fears, her hopes, sensations, excitements, okay? And she is ready to live the life that she deserves, so to speak, okay? And she learns from her mistakes or perils. That is the end of the quote. So, next quote, from chapter 23, is a very, very famous quote, especially the beginning. I'm no bird and no net ensnares me. I'm free. I'm a free human being. We're almost in a Jane Austen novel. And again, it's the strong female character refusing to be submissive to any man in her life. Because don't forget, at that time, in the English society, women were dependent on their husbands. And this is when she refuses to finally marry Rochester. Chapter 26, okay, it's about when she actually discovers all about Bertha Mason, okay, and it's the first time she describes her. A figure ran backwards and forwards. So she felt someone in the place. She felt there was someone in the place, but she couldn't actually identify the person. So it's like a ghost in the story. Interesting, contributing to the Gothic dimension. Next quote, chapter 30. Okay, so this quote is about when she reaches Moor House, okay, which is the next stop after Thornfield. And this is where she actually gets her heritage, okay, and she becomes self-sufficient, She doesn't need anyone anymore to survive in this society. Afterwards, this is why, and maybe we can understand that in her point of view, this is why maybe she was able to marry Rochester in the end, and the very end of the novel takes place in Ferndean, okay, where she lives with her husband, and we understand that she's expecting, or language, because I am a husband life, feeling mine, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so she is actually happy, let's say, in the end, and fully accomplished, at least. So, to finish, as usual, I've put some references, a few references that you could include to a portfolio about Jane Eyre. We couldn't talk about the novel without mentioning its prequel, White's Agassiz, Jean Rhys, a Jamaican writer. Then The Governess of Thornfield is another version of it. It's a rewriting of the novel. There is an exhibition, okay, also about it, to include visual art. An album by Taylor Swift, in which she was inspired by Jane Eyre. And of course, the opera and all the different adaptations in theaters. So, Jane Eyre was a very strong female character that could definitely live in the 21st century, where women are still fighting a few of the same fights. So I hope that you will enjoy reading the novel and discovering it in class. Have a very, very nice day. Good luck.